What if I told you that the best top laner in the game was actually a rock? Maybe that's an overstatement, but it's definitely close. Hey Summoners and ProGuides family, it's been a minute. We haven't done this one for you guys in a bit, but we're here with another meta update headed into patch 10.20. We'll be covering everything you need to know to win more of your games in the next patch, covering whatever comes up. We cover stuff like builds and champion picks in this series, and it all just depends on what's trending. If you want to get a head start on the next patch, look no further because we'll be covering the little things you'll need to be aware of. Before we start the video, I want you guys to know that another way you guys can be better prepared to win more games is by checking out ProGuides.com. On there, we've got tons of resources like VOD reviews, which will help save you time and pinpoint exactly what you need to put your attention towards if you're trying to improve. Finally, for our question of the day, what other features do you want to see Riot add to League of Legends? One thing I think they're still missing is the fact that you can only use the training tool by yourself. Being able to use it with another player could open up so many more possibilities, and I think that's one small thing they could do to continue improving the game. But let me know your answers in the comments below because I want to hear your thoughts. With that said, let's jump into the video. To preface everything, one thing in regards to the meta we want to talk about is the pacing of games. The majority of games end by the 30-minute mark. There are a decent number of games that go 5 minutes beyond that, but it's much rarer for games to go anywhere beyond 35 minutes. For reference, we can look at professional games to gauge levels and items. In a slower, more farm-heavy game, you might see champions hit level 16 or 17 and finish their 4th item. However, a lot of the time, we'll see that solo laners are instead sitting at level 15, trying to make that final push towards level 16. In terms of items, they're usually on 3, trying to finish their 4th item. Of course, this is always going to vary depending on how much team fighting is going on, how fed you are, and whatever other chaos might ensue. The point we're trying to draw upon here is that the majority of games are decided before you hit level 16 and before you finish your 4th item. It's important, thus, to pick champions based on how strong they are with 1 or 2 items instead. That said, let's talk about the top lane first. In the top lane, we've got a couple of champions worth your attention. The first is a pretty obvious one, especially if you've been paying attention to what high elo players think. If you watch our other videos too, you should already know by now that CAMILLE is one of the best top laners in the game right now. For many patches now, CAMILLE has been the most picked top laner in high elo. We can attribute part of this to the fact that she holds a lower win rate in comparison to some other top laners, but it stands that no matter who people are actually banning, CAMILLE is making it through a lot of these drafts, and players are okay locking her in when she's available. CAMILLE is an incredible solo queue carry because she has so much going for her. CAMILLE has all the tools you'd want in a carry-type champion. Her damage output is high, she's extremely mobile, has crowd control, and also has a pretty solid laning phase. By running Grasp of the Undying, you can make CAMILLE into a laner that's more than competent. You'll be able to run Shield Bash as well, which synergizes with her passive. When putting this all together with a Q max, you'll be able to take short, decisive trades with CAMILLE to slowly but surely dominate the laning phase. If you want to be that explosive, playmaking top laner, CAMILLE should be your go-to pick right now. Another champion worth mentioning is MALPHITE. This guy is looking very strong right now. MALPHITE held extremely high win rates even in high elo in patch 10.19. He's a great pick because he's the natural enemy of AD champions. Building armor also provides MALPHITE with more damage because of his unique armor scaling on his abilities. Not only that, but his E slows down the attack speeds of targets hit by it significantly. Next patch, MALPHITE will be even stronger because one of his hardest matchups is going to get a lot easier. Maokai is getting nerfed, meaning that comparatively, all other tanks should feel a bit stronger. MALPHITE does struggle a bit against Maokai, so this nerf should indirectly make MALPHITE even more of an appealing pick. When looking for a tank pick to round out team composition, MALPHITE is probably your best bet next patch. Another reason why MALPHITE is finding so much success is that AP top laners are struggling right now. Even a veteran like Rumble is struggling to find his footing in the current top lane meta. AP champions feel a little too brittle to play right now, and thus, MALPHITE has a golden opportunity to shine. Sorry to sound like a broken record, but this is something we believe is worth repeating. Executioner's Calling and Bramble Vest are your friends, especially when you're playing against champions who have ridiculous amounts of healing. You need to drop the ego and invest some gold into these items. Picks like Fiora and Aatrox, who's getting buffed by the way, rely on their built-in sustain to win fights. Combined with Conquer, these kinds of champions can feel pretty oppressive to play versus. However, because you can significantly reduce their healing by simply building one item, you really don't have much reason not to. That's it for the top lane, so let's head into the jungle next. For the jungle, we've got a couple of champions we want to go over. The first is Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai has one of the strongest 2-item power spikes in the game, and that's a part of why she's so good in high elo. In Diamond 2 and higher on patch 10.19, Rek'Sai fell a little short of a 54% win rate. It's clear that even if she's not the most popular pick, she's a very powerful one. Just in case you don't know, the meta build on Rek'Sai right now is to build a warrior enchantment with Stalker's Blade, boots somewhere in the mix, and then an Edge of Night. Rek'Sai is basically like a shark in the water. You see her approaching you, and the best thing you can do is to try to run away. However, Stalker's Blade and Edge of Night make this almost impossible once you've noticed her on your screen. By smiting you, she's able to activate Nimbus Cloak to quickly catch up to you and unleash her combo. The Edge of Night makes it almost impossible to disengage as well. Normally, a lot of players would try to stun Rek'Sai or hit her with some form of crowd control so they can buy time. However, Edge of Night blocking a spell allows Rek'Sai to make a straight beeline towards her prey without any worries. Considering how high Rek'Sai's damage output is in the early to mid game, it only makes sense that she's such a powerful pick right now. In high elo, games are even shorter, but we think that her power isn't something exclusive to that bracket. Being stronger at your 2-item power spike means you're able to control the flow of games. Theoretically, if you're stronger, you can force any fight for any reason as long as it's within reason. Your opponent's options are to either fight and lose or concede. Either way, you can use Rek'Sai's quick power spikes to strong-arm opponents into giving up objectives or even kills. Another pick that's going to be pretty dominant headed into next patch is NUNU. While NUNU is receiving a minor nerf to his armor, his 53% win rate in high elo on patch 10.19 illustrates that he's arguably the best tank jungler in the game. NUNU deals acceptable amounts of damage, but more importantly, soaks up a ton of damage with his sustain and also brings a ton of crowd control to the table. Along with his iconic giant snowball, NUNU and Willump can also root several enemies at once with their E and also create a ton of space with their ultimate. Overall, NUNU is a high-impact pick, and just like Rek'Sai, functions very well with even just a single item. At 2 items, he gets a little bit tankier, and assuming that second item was a Dead Man's Stoneplate, you'll be able to utilize the extra movement speed for some extra playmaking potential. Alright, let's run through the mid lane. Here's some more indirect buffs to champions as a result of nerfs to other ones. Kassadin is getting nerfed next patch, so guess who you should look to? It's FIZZ. Honestly, it feels like FIZZ can kill you without items as long as he's able to land his shark. But of course, being more realistic, FIZZ will have his items rather quickly because they're cheap. Hextech Proto Belt is one of the cheapest first items in the game, and it provides more than enough damage for him to begin wreaking havoc. A single solo kill can be all it takes for FIZZ to pop off and start dominating games. His E already makes him slippery enough to deal with. It allows him to escape from ganks many other mid laners would struggle with. At the same time, FIZZ is an excellent turret diver, meaning that his roams are absolutely devastating. Not to mention, a snowballing FIZZ is basically impossible to lane against. You have to give him a ton of respect, and if you don't, he'll jump on you and kill you to pick up some free gold. Thus, it's pretty common for mid laners to give up lane priority so they don't continue feeding FIZZ and turning him into a bigger problem. The issue is that FIZZ is able to use that pressure and rotate somewhere else on the map to make it that player's problem instead. Currently, attack damage mid laners are very popular right now. Zed, Yasuo, and Yone are the most popular mid laners in high elo. Overall, Akali takes a third spot over Yone, but you have to remember that Yone's ban rate is ridiculous. It's over 40%. If it wasn't that high, it's certain that he would definitely be picked more often than Akali. The frequency of these mid laners causes a couple things you need to be aware of. First is that, of course, you might need to itemize against them. Run an armor rune if necessary, and also consider an early Seeker's Arm Guard or Cloth Armors. In response to these picks, we're actually seeing a decent amount of Camille and Rumble picked as an answer. Camille's passive shield allows her to trade quite favorably, while Rumble is naturally inclined to build a Seeker's Arm Guard as Zanya's Hourglass is a core part of his build. The final implication of all this is the need for more AP junglers and AP supports, which we will talk about a bit later. Alright, let's head into the bottom lane now that we've covered what we needed to in the mid lane. The bottom lane is going through a big meta shift. With the Caitlyn nerfs that recently hit the live server, she's felt a lot weaker, and we're seeing some major shifts once again. This coming patch, you'll want to look out for Miss Fortune, Jhin, and Samira in particular. Season 10 as a whole has always favored whichever bot lane champion could dominate the laning phase. We saw this with Varus when he was absolutely oppressive with his Q poke, Ashe not too long ago with her higher damage as well as range, and most recently with Caitlyn. All three of these champions were nerfed, so now the question comes down to who the strongest lane bullies are now. Miss Fortune was another champion who was absolutely brutal to play against earlier this season. She could snowball leads so well because of how much presence she commanded in the bottom lane with her incredibly high early game damage. Her buffs have nearly put her back to where she was before. Miss Fortune's win rates have been gradually climbing, and alongside Jin, who's notorious for having an excellent early game, it looks like we're going to see some new faces leading the charge in the bottom lane. While it's hard to assess just how strong Samira really is because she's still being balanced, one thing is clear: she's an extremely blessed bot laner. In order to ensure that they can gather enough data on her, however, it's almost certain that Riot is going to keep her on the stronger side for a while to encourage players to use her. With enough games, it'll get easier to balance her. However, the thing about Samira is that she's one of those champions. She has so much damage and so much utility built into her kit that it's going to be very hard to ever reach that sweet spot. Aside from those 3 picks, we got one more with Senna. It's a good time to talk about her because we just mentioned that whole balancing issue with champions who have so much built into their kits. Senna is one of them. She's a marksman with remarkable amounts of utility. She has heals, crowd control, the ability to cloak her allies, and to top it all off, she's a high-range carry who still deals plenty of damage. Riot did nerf her this patch, but it hasn't really been enough to stop her from carrying games. Senna's scaling was hit, but once again, games are often decided before the 30-minute mark, and you shouldn't bank on hitting some crazy 1000 stack power spike with Senna. That's it for the bottom lane, so let's transition it into the supports to wrap it all up. Alright, like we mentioned earlier, there's definitely a sort of necessity for AP supports. In general, your top laner is going to pick some kind of AD bruiser because statistically speaking, they're simply the most effective picks right now. Junglers can be anything based on player preference, but of course, there are more AD junglers than AP junglers if we're just comparing how many options are available. In cases where your mid laner decides to pick a popular AD champion, that's going to leave the magic damage roll up to supports. If they don't choose to pick an AP support, defensive itemization becomes much easier, and a pair of ninja tabbies becomes a little bit too valuable for the enemy team. To avoid this tragic scenario, you'll want to pick up either Swain, Zyra, or Brand. If you're gold or lower, Brand is an exceptional pick because of his high damage output. In higher elo, however, you should lean towards Zyra and Swain because they provide more utility. Finally, let's talk about the support meta right now. We've had very few support balance changes in the last few patches, and in a way, this is justified. The support meta is actually very diverse right now. In high elo, for example, Thresh is still the most popular support pick, but following him are 2 enchanters, Lulu and Yuumi. Morgana follows up as number 4, but she's somewhere between an aggressive support pick and an enchanter, as she's quite a crowd control heavy champion. The top 4 across all ranks are Lux, Thresh, Morgana, and Leona in that order. An enchanter, 2 aggressive supports, and a direct counter to aggressive supports. You get the idea. There are plenty of options right now. Of all the champions, however, there's only one oddball that we need to really spend time talking about. Pantheon support has been something we've been talking about a lot on this channel. However, for those of you who don't watch every single one of our videos, we felt like it'd be nice to just provide some information. In high elo especially, players started picking up Pantheon support several patches ago. His damage output is naturally pretty good, but on top of this, he covers all the bases a support needs to rather well. He has crowd control, incredible ganks with his ultimate, and can even tank a lot of damage with the Z. A big part of why he's good in high elo is how well he sets up turret dives. That E is actually ridiculous, and you can't take it for granted. Gradually, we've noticed this trend creep into mid and low elo as well. Although Pantheon isn't the most popular support pick, he's definitely established his presence as one, taking the spot as the 11th most played support on patch 10.19. He's slightly more popular than Soraka, so that basically confirms that he's made it. Welcome to the support life, Mr. Pantheon! With that said, it's ironically safer to assume that a Pantheon locked in by the enemy team will go support. While there's no guarantee, Pantheon support sees significantly more play than when he's played in other roles. With all that said, we'll conclude our meta update for patch 10.20. Thank you guys so much for watching, and like always, we really appreciate it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so we can inform you anytime we upload informational content just like this. Also, check out ProGuides.com if you're serious about making that end of season push to hit your ranked goals. Until next time though, best of luck out on Summoner's Rift.